filming this video after work on a weekend, so don't say I never did anything for this channel. Hey, it's KayDee, and for today's video I'm going to be talking about what I do for work, because that's interesting. So for those of you who don't know, which I'm assuming is most of you, I have a full-time job as a funeral director, more specifically a funeral intern. So I have not yet received my degree, but I'm currently going to school to get my degree. I have been a funeral intern since I was straight out of high school. So I have been doing this job since I was 18. Now let me start this video with a disclaimer. The reason I am making this video is because one is to clear up a few misconceptions about what I do, and two, because when I was thinking about making this video, I thought that maybe this would be something that people would be interested in being educated about, but also this is the type of video that I wish I would have had when I was thinking about going into this profession. I wish that there would have been something like this out on YouTube that I could have looked at to kind of get a feel for the job and what it is. So that is my main reason for making this video today. Also, I am in no way an expert in what I am talking about. I am just someone who is fairly new to this career field, and everything that I'm talking about today I have learned by just on-the-job experience. I anticipate that this is going to be a long video, so to kind of help you guys out, to kind of be able to skip around the video, I will leave timestamps in the description below so you guys can kind of go to, you know, which topics you want to hear about. First of all, I want to talk to you guys about how I got this job. When I was considering going into the funeral industry, I was told by everybody, good luck if you can get into a funeral home, because they only hire people that are family in a funeral home, or because you're so young you're going to have a really hard time getting into a funeral home. And you know, people really just kind of doubted me. So let me tell you guys how I got involved in the funeral home that I do work for. So flashback to senior year KayDee. I was 17. It was probably in December. There was a really big push at my school for seniors to kind of get going on college applications and figuring out a long-term career path and things like that. When I was kind of thinking about jobs that I wanted to go into, I knew that I wanted to go into something that was kind of in the medical field. I was thinking maybe a doctor or nurse or a therapist, or I really wanted to be a hygienist for a while, and then I really had a really big push to be a paramedic, so I did a few courses for that. But I grew up living next door to a mortuary. I don't even know how I got this idea. I don't know what brought it up. Just one day I kind of looked out my window, because the mortuary, I could look out my bedroom window and see the mortuary next door, and I was kind of looking out my window one day and I was like, huh, I didn't know anybody at the mortuary. I've been to very, very few funerals in my entire life. I can't even remember the last funeral for a family member or loved one that I went to. I still can't. But I just thought that maybe I would give it a try. So I was kind of doing a little bit of research online about what kind of goes on in a funeral home. Like I said earlier in the video, you know, I really couldn't go on YouTube and find a lot about, you know, what a mortician does or what a funeral director does. I just decided to walk next door one day and just kind of ask. I went next door to the mortuary, which is the current mortuary that I work at. However, I will not say the name, but it is a fairly prominent, I feel like it is a fairly prominent mortuary for my area. I am in Utah. I had heard really good things about them. They had a really good reputation. They had handled all of my family members' funeral services, so I did trust them, and I knew that, you know, I was going to get a good opinion. So I went in one day and I asked to speak to a manager. The plan was to ask if I could maybe do like a job shadow for a day. However, I was told that due to certain confidentiality, you know, agreements and things like that, I was not allowed to actually job shadow a funeral director for the day, because they do work directly with the deceased loved ones, and if I was not someone who worked at the funeral home, that I was not, you know, allowed to see that. They said, well, you can come in and be an intern and get a good feel for it that way. So I said, okay, cool, well, I'll just be an intern now. And they said, no, wait a second, you have to be graduated from high school. Well, I don't graduate for another maybe 5 or 6 months. And you know, he looked at me and he said, you know, if you really want it, then you'll come back. I have a lot of people that really want this position, but you do have to be graduated and 18. So I said, okay, I gave him my phone number. I found out what I would have to do when I wanted to come back. Fast forward to a few months later, since I had gone and talked to the funeral home owner, I had gotten really interested and really excited in doing, working in a funeral home, being, a mortician or a funeral director. I just was dead set on this being my career. The day of my graduation rolled around and I went to graduation, and then right after graduation, we had my, my lunch or whatever, and then I changed my clothes and I went straight to the funeral home and I said, okay, I am graduated. What do I have to do now? The owner, he said, okay, sure, let me give you a tour and we can kind of see if you still feel comfortable doing it. So he gave me a tour of the mortuary. We get to the end of the tour and he kind of looks at me, and I think he kind of expected me to be a little uneasy about it. But he looked at me and he was kind of like, hey, so what do you think? And I looked at him and I was like, let's do it. Like, I want to work here so bad, and I'm so dedicated and hardworking, and I will do whatever it takes to, excel in this career field. He said, okay, you're hired. What? Well, I thought that you had a lot of people going after this position. And he said, yeah, at the time that you asked me to come be here, he's like, I had a lot of people coming out for the position, but nobody ever followed through with it. The number one thing that I took away from this was to always follow through no matter how the odds are against you. He said, the people that were coming here before you, they didn't show any dedication, and he said, you're the first applicant that has actually come back. I started like within the next few weeks. My first day on the job was actually the 4th of July. So next, I kind of want to go about answering the number one question that I get whenever anybody finds out what I do for work. They're always baffled, and it just, how young I am and that I'm a girl. But the number one question that I am asked is, well, why did you choose this? Why would you want to do this? The answer for me is really simple. When I was thinking about what I wanted to do as a career, I really wanted a job that I felt like would give my life purpose, where I could connect with people and lighten people's burdens. Those are really common things to want in a job for people, but nobody really ever considers this career field. It's kind of taboo, to be honest, or at least that's what it feels like, is that it's kind of a taboo career field to go into for, girls or people that are my age, or just in general, It's really interesting. It intrigues me. I'm constantly learning every day. No 2 days are the same at this job. I honestly, truly love my job. I can say with 100% certainty that I truly love my job. And how they say, if you have a job that you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Well, that's true, and I can tell you that that's true because I have a job that I'm absolutely in love with. So another common question that I'm asked is kind of what my job entails. I tell people that I'm a funeral intern, and they say, well, what does that mean? Like, what do you do? I forgot to mention this. I am a licensed funeral intern. I had to take a test. I had to get certified to be an intern to work in this career field. I should have mentioned that earlier, but I am certified to be, doing what I'm doing. And I'm constantly supervised by a licensed funeral director. I am actually an intern under a specific funeral director. I am an intern for, his name is Skylar, he's awesome. But I'm Skylar's intern, so all day at work, I'm following Skylar everywhere, and I am learning directly from him. So whatever Skylar does, I do too, or I kind of help Skylar do what he needs to do, which means that I, pick up loved ones after they've passed away. I help embalm the deceased. I help with cremations. I also meet with families and help make arrangements. I, help write obituaries. I do hair and makeup on the deceased. Pretty much from the time that somebody passes away until they are interred, I am with them along the way. So another thing people usually ask me about is kind of what my day entails. No 2 days at work are the same. I have more funerals one day than some days, or where there's like nothing happening one day and then we get slammed on the weekend. So I don't come into work every day and do the exact same routine every day, if that makes sense. I just come into work and see kind of what we have going on and work with that. Another part of my job is being on call. So much like a nurse is on call at a hospital, I am on call at the mortuary. Skylar and I are, we're partners. He's stuck with me. We're on call 1 day a week, and our day is Wednesday. So that means that if anybody passes away, pretty much from Wednesday night until Thursday morning, we are on call, which means that if anybody passes away, between those two times, Skylar and I are responsible for going to the home or the hospital, picking up the deceased and bringing them back to the mortuary. If the family chooses to have an embalming, we will go ahead and embalm right then and there. And then we are responsible for, setting up appointments with the family, which can be kind of tiring. Some nights we don't get any calls, and other nights it's just call back to back to back to back, and we're just exhausted all night. That's part of the job, and then the other funeral directors in my company, we all kind of rotate, and then I think it's every 6 weeks we are on call for the weekend from Saturday until Monday morning. It's kind of a 24-hour job, to be honest. Another thing that I want to talk about is schooling for this profession. Certification differs from state to state, but for the state that I am in, which is Utah, I am required to attend a mortuary science program where I learn everything from history of death to, modern practices and, pretty much anything that I would, need to know to obviously be in this field. So our program is a 1-year program. So in order to be certified, we have to do the 1 year of schooling, pass the board exam, and then you also have to complete 50 embalmings. So now I'm going to kind of talk about some things that I think would be helpful for people who are thinking about going into this job field. There's really not a lot that funeral directors can say to people about what we do, because it's not secretive, but you can't really talk about specifics about people, much like how doctors can't talk about their patients. We're not allowed to talk about the families that we take care of. So there's a very big confidentiality agreement going on there. I'm just going to go ahead and talk about some things that I wish I would have known when I was coming into this field. One thing that I wish I would have known coming into this field, and this is probably the number one thing I wish I would have known when I was, thinking about doing this, is I wish I would have known how draining it is. Not just physically draining, but also emotionally draining. I think I'm somebody who feels everything a little bit more intensely than others, and so when I was very first starting out here, and I was meeting with families and I was meeting their loved ones, I got very emotionally attached to everybody that I was talking to, and I felt so much, love, and I hurt for them, and I was thinking every night about what I could do to help them. Which is good, but after a while, it really started to weigh down on me, and that's when I kind of had to step back and learn how to kind of detach myself a little bit, meaning that I kind of had to learn to not get too emotionally invested in people for my own health, which is something that's really important to learn early on in this career, because I think that if I was still like that today, I would still be, I'd still be pretty stressed out. But because I've learned to kind of cope with that, I'm, doing much better. Another thing that this job really takes a toll on is your social life, which, I know that really isn't a big deal to some people, but, this job, like I said earlier, is a 24-hour job, it consumes my life a little bit. There are early mornings, there are late nights. Some days I hardly ever see my family, which can be an issue for people, who have families. But for somebody like me, who's young, single, has no social life, and is living at home, that's really not that big of a deal for me. But I can see how that could take a toll on a family. One thing that I think is important to note, and something that I'm very grateful for, is that I have done my internship before I've gone to school. By doing my internship first, I am very prepared, and I know exactly what I'm getting myself into, and I'm very sure that this is what I want to do. So, I realized that I forgot to mention, the most important part of the video, which is, why I love my job. So, I'm just gonna insert that in the video right now real quick. Let me just tell you about it. I get to work with really, really amazing people. I get to meet some truly amazing families, and I get really cool opportunities at this job to, step out of my comfort zone and, work on myself, and I think that's really important. I also get to work with some of the most amazing people ever. I think funeral directors are some of the funniest people you'll ever meet. Seriously, we have great sense of humors. But, this job really does take a certain kind of person, and it's not for everybody. I know that. I for sure think that funeral directors are some of the most down-to-earth, loving, caring people that you'll ever meet, and I know that because of the people that I have the opportunity to work with. I also consider it kind of a privilege to see people at their lowest lows. When I meet people through my job, they've just experienced the loss of a loved one, and they're very vulnerable, and I think that brings out the best in people. It can also bring out the worst, I know that, but that's a story for another video. I'm just at a loss for words because I love this job, and I don't regret coming into this job field at all. I'm so happy with where I'm at, and you know how much I've grown as a person through, you know, being in this career field and working where I do. Okay, now you can insert the outro. Just kidding, I lied. I also want to let you guys know that I didn't cover everything in this video. So if there are any aspiring funeral directors out there or people that have questions about, you know, what I do, feel free to comment them down below, and I could, you know, make a video later on answering your questions and talking a little bit more in depth about what I do. So, okay, now go to the outro. Okay guys, that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys have any questions about what I do, feel free to ask them in the comments below. Make sure to go follow me on all of my social media, which will be in the description below and at the end of this video, and I will see you guys next time. Bye. It's a dead man's party. Who could ask for